We have reached the conclusion of our 28 cooler ice retention challenge. It made it a full 9 days and then some. By day 10, everyone was out. So let's break it down for you.
Gear up and get outside.
Last night, I brought everything inside. I've got 28 coolers, and they're all sitting here in my house. Thought I could do it the way that's not very plausible and try to chill them, but really I just did it like we'll all do it. I brought them in the night before, so they kind of bring that, they're all at the same temperature. And then I'm gonna load them up with ice. I just bought 1,200 pounds of ice, and we're gonna put all these outside. We're gonna load them up, and we're gonna see how it goes. Okay, so what I've done is I've put 40 pounds of ice in every cooler we've got. And then, well, it started out at 40 by the time it got here. Probably closer to 35 after some melted. But then we're gonna go and in each of them, we're gonna put a few cans of soda and a hot dog just wrapped in saran wrap. The idea of that is each day we're gonna go back and I'm gonna take 4 observations per cooler. Observation 1 is there still ice or not? Regardless of water, just yes, ice or no. And so it'll get a 1 or a 0. Second thing is, what's the temperature using just an infrared thermometer of the lid? That's just because you don't really want to shoot straight on the ice, so it'll probably get the same on all of them. But just on the lid, that'll be some indication. Probably not your real air indication, but it's a constant that I can do in all the coolers. The third observation will be, is there enough ice to suspend like cans of soda on top of the ice? So that just tells you, is there a lot of ice or is there a little bit of ice? You know, once it reaches a certain point, all the cans start sinking in the water, ice water, right? And that can still keep them cold for a while. But the longer you have a stack of ice that suspends the cans, I think that's an indication of just being consistently cold. And then the fourth thing is the hot dog test, which I'm going to take a little pen thermometer, you know, like you use in your kitchen. I'm just gonna stick it and see, is that the proper temperature that meat needs to be stored at? So that's kind of your food safety indicator. And it'll get 1 point for each of those that it passes each day. I'm gonna go until all of them got 4 zeros in a day. I'll just add them all up and the one with the highest number wins. And these are different sizes, so 40 pounds of ice might look different in different coolers. I've got a bunch more ice, so I'm gonna see if I can't just fill all of these to max capacity. And if I do that, then, I mean, that's the ideal way to pack a cooler is as full as possible. That should give us our best case scenario for each. And granted, they're different volumes, but they're all in the medium to large size. They're all hard coolers. The idea being these are like kind of the average size you would buy if you were gonna go camping for a long weekend with a family of 4. I got a family of 5. Some of these that are in like the 50 quart range are a little tight, but like 60 seems to be sufficient. And I could sometimes use a bigger one if I'm gonna go longer. So that's the idea, we'll see how it goes. Now I've filled them all with ice. They've got sodas in them, they've got a hot dog in them, and they're gonna be out here. I'm gonna leave them in the shade as best I can in my backyard. And they're just gonna stay out because that's how you use it in the real world. So this isn't some garage or cold storage test or some lab deal. This is a real world test. You know, I took them in my house overnight. They kind of cooled off to room temperature in an air conditioned house. And then today I brought them out, filled them with ice, put my stuff in them, and out they're gonna stay just as they would as if they're in the back of your truck heading up to the campsite and then you're out camping or you're on the boat or you're out hunting and whatever. They're gonna be outside all day long, 24/7. I'll put them up in some shady areas in the yard. But that's what we're gonna do. All right, it has been 24 hours, almost, a little shy actually. I'm gonna check these things every morning, but about 24 hours since we started the cooler ice retention test. That a lot of these coolers seem to have become cooler overnight, which makes sense. They were sitting there longer. When I was zapping the top, some of them were even showing like at or below freezing, like 32 degrees or lower. And so that was pretty cool. I did notice a consistent difference between the rotomolded, which are, you know, a lot thicker and more durable and have the extra insulation in there compared to kind of the conventional blown molded plastic coolers. Igloo Max Cold apparently doesn't have any insulation in the lid. Not enough anyway, because the lid has been over 50 degrees since the beginning. So it's just losing a lot more heat out the top. The other noteworthy thing, after only a day, or even for this guy, less than a day because I filled him last, is the big bobber. Yeah, that's to be expected. I didn't expect that one to be cool. I got it because it was fun and gimmicky, and it is so as intended. I think it's, you know, it's for your cooler for the afternoon. Throw some drinks in while you're going to go float the river, and you want to tie it to a little rope to bob behind your inner tube. You know, that's what that That one's best for, and it's kind of fun to look at and it floats around, so that's fun. Day 4 today. But what I'm gonna do today is actually seeing some of these, that ice is kind of bunching up. So I'm gonna kind of break that up because it's kind of at a tipping point. If I were camping, that's what I do. So I'm just gonna break it up, and that's gonna change the game a little bit. Cooler Ice Retention Challenge, day 5. It has been 5 full days. Let's take a look at Grandpa's old igloo. Look at that, still holding strong. It's still cold, not holding sodas up, but you got a cold hot dog and cold sodas, and you still got some ice, and that's after 5 full days. You know, as they say, they don't make them like they used to. The Coleman, little cheap Coleman, is officially out. Now, it doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, it went a day longer than anticipated. Advertised for 3 days, went 4 solid days, but didn't make it to 5 days. So it's a 4-day max cooler. You know, that's probably your best conditions and not opening and closing it a lot, etc. So that one's out. We're going to take that one out of the running. All these others are kind of doing in a similar boat as this one. They're still keeping things cold, as is this one. The roto-moldeds, they're all pretty much in the same boat except for our leakers. So the angle, it was, leaking out of the valve before. Now I think I got it tightened up so there's water in there. But the only reason those are, it's that low actually is because it was leaking. But everything's cold. It's working good now. I just had to figure out that valve. Same thing on the Cabela's actually, the exact same deal occurred. That valve was leaking. Took me a little bit to get it sorted out. Now it is sorted out, and it's still got a good amount of ISO. So we have another loser today. And this one doesn't surprise me only because I've been a little disappointed with it so far, and that's the Igloo Max Cold Costco Special. So it's totally out of the running. Well, let's take a look at what most of them look like. Now, the rotomoldeds, other than the angle and the Cabela's that are an anomaly because of the leaking thing, they're all kind of in the same boat. This is a guide gear. This one maybe has a little more water than the others, but this one is sold by Sportsman's Guide. But it's still, it's still cold. Everything's still looking good. So 5 days in, and pretty much any of these rotomolded coolers are going to do the trick. So if you never take a trip more than 5 days, you might not have to think too hard. They're all doing pretty good. Now, all these here, they're kind of classic, not roto-molded ones. They are obviously different construction. If you're opening and closing a lot, that's the thing I'm not doing that you probably would be if you're camping, especially if you got kids like me. They're going to be in there all the time and leave it open. They're not going to hold ice as well as the roto-moldeds because they just stay colder longer, but still pretty good results so far. One that I thought would have crapped out already, and it hasn't, is this Igloo, the Trailmate, because it's not super thick or anything in terms of insulation, but it's still doing all right. It's still got some ice in there. It's pretty big capacity. That's one of the biggest ones I've got, 70 quart. Okay, folks, it is a new day. It has been 6 full days now since we started this ice retention challenge with the 28 coolers, and who will be joining the losers today. So these ones are the ones that dropped out, and I shouldn't say losers. They're great coolers. They are good for what they are. So here we have Grandpa's old cooler, and it is done. All water, not cold anymore. Hot dog's not cold enough. Here is the Igloo Trailmate, but this one's out of the game today. Still, not too bad. 5 days out of a 4-day cooler that, frankly, I was surprised even lasted that. We'll have 2 more joining the ranks of the down and out. So the Igloo Trailmate and Grandpa's old Igloo, which, surprise, surprise, the only surprise there is that it lasted 5 days and not 2. Folks, it's an interesting day. Day 7 of our Cooler Ice Retention Challenge. We're going to see which ones are going to join the ones that have already dropped out of this race. Our number 1 that dropped out today is the Igloo BMX. As you can see, no ice left. It's barely over 50 degrees, so that water's still cold, colder than an alpine lake, but there's no ice. That hot dog's above temperature. It's not going to cut it. And also, let's get to this one, the Coleman 317 or 371, also out of the running. Now, that doesn't surprise me too much. Now, this was only rated for 5 days, so the fact that it made it 6 plus is a good thing. But this little guy here was also only rated for 5 days, also Coleman Extreme Marine. And look at that, still ice. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed by this guy. He's cruising. He's hanging with the big dogs right now, and he costs about a third or quarter as much as some of these big dogs. Now, let's get into the rotomoldeds. Most of the rotomoldeds are okay, but we do have our first losers. The Costco Special Coho, all out of ice and warmer than what we want. And the hot dog was above temperature too. So this one is out. That's our first rotomolded loser, and that's a 55 quart. So that's kind of on the top end of a medium size, you know, getting into about a large size cooler. But we have more, folks. We have more. Here is the Cordova, and unfortunately, it's out of the running today. So it made it a full 6 days and then some. Nice little cooler, but also this is the smallest that we've got out here. It's a 45 quart. So you can't quite expect as much because you simply don't get as much ice in there. There's not quite as much mass, but it did a great job for what it is. So I'm fairly impressed, but not entirely surprised to see that one go first, given it's a little smaller. And then the Rolls Royce of coolers, I guess, the Rover roller. It's good, but it's not that good. Apparently it's out of ice. Now this is also a 45 quart, so that plays a part in it as well. But that one's out of the running. So those kind of surprised me, but not too much. Now the real surprise to me was this Pelican, the roller version. And this is also 45 quart. So we're seeing a trend here. That might be more of the explainer than construction or anything else, but it is out. It's out of the running. The Pelican 45 quart didn't make it a full week. Not quite. At least not the way I had it in our conditions. The other one didn't make it is this Rtic Ultralight 52 quart. So also in that medium range, but on the top end, it's out of it. It didn't make it. Now this one's kind of an interesting one. So this is also Pelican just like that, but it's injection molded, not rotomolded, and it's slightly larger with 50 quarts instead of 45. It is almost out. Still has a little bit of ice, so we're counting them in the running, but it's definitely not holding cans up. That hot dog is sunk down in the water and was it like 48 degrees or something. So really not a safe temp for that anymore. So it got a demerit there. So that one surprised me a little bit. I thought this one was a solid week longer, but not quite. Well, it did make it. I guess it barely hung in there for a week. Oh, one more that fell out. This Coleman roller. This is also a Coleman Extreme. So actually the same one as our white marine one over there, except this is not the marine version. So maybe there's something different about that. But this is the Coleman roller and it's out. But another impressive game because that one too was only supposed to last 5 days and it made it past 6. So that's pretty good. So 8 more out of the game today. So that brings us to a total of 13 out. That means we have 15 remaining. Still not bad. A week. 15 of them made it a week long. I have a feeling these next few days are going to be wild. Just wild. Day 8. It has been 8 full days of the ice retention challenge for the coolers, and we have some things shaken up. Let's go through them. Here's the Coleman Extreme Marine. It's out of the game. An impressive full week on what is supposed to be a 5-day cooler. The Igloo, however you say that, it is also out. All right, this is where it starts to get interesting. So the Rtic, no more ice. However, when I shot the temperature of that lid, it's still below 50 degrees, and that hot dog even was still a safe temperature, 40 degrees. Same thing on the Yeti. No more ice. Ice is gone, but it's still pretty cold in there. So it does indeed hold that air better than some. Then we get to the Canyon and it gets even more nuanced. No ice, but we're hitting a temperature, right at 50. See, it's already warmed up from opening it once. It was just below 50 before. This one's kind of borderline, and that hot dog was above, well into the 40s. So above the safe temperature. The guide gear is a clean out. It's warm all around. This X-Spec that was still looking pretty good through yesterday just had a rapid decline. But this one too is measuring below 45 there. And I think this one, I'll have to look, but I think the hot dog was okay too. Actually, no, that hot dog was not okay. Then we get to this Yeti Tundra Haul. Pretty much the same construction as the others, except it has wheels. And it's slightly smaller, 60 quart instead of 65. And this one met the temperature up here, at least when I first opened it. Yep. So it's still pretty cool in there, but that hot dog's too warm. So this one's got 1 out of 4 points for the day. Here's the Lifetime. Exact same story on this one as the Yeti Tundra Haul. So they performed exactly the same. They've been sitting next to each other all week long. Now, this Amazon Special, this was the same too. I think, if I recall, I think this temperature, No, barely below 50. So this one's pretty much out, but it did get 1 point for being below 50 up there. I kind of think I maybe should have made that 45. It might have been a better indicator. And then the OtterBox, while it has that leaking problem, it's still the only one of 4 with ice left, and everything's safe temperature, even the lid, despite it being pretty voluminous and not having very much ice left. And then the Pelican, as I expected, because yesterday it already had several demerits, it's totally out of the game. So that was a bit interesting, I thought. We have 15 left after a full week after yesterday. Today there are only 4 left with ice. Those are the real leaders, and that is the Orion, the Orca, the Cabela's, and the OtterBox. Out of the 15, we have 11 that still met the below 50 degrees on the lid. So that means they're still staying pretty cool. They hold that cool air for a decent amount of time. My guess is that ice was gone probably mid or late afternoon yesterday, and it's just been staying cool overnight. But by the day's end, or even this afternoon, it won't be cool anymore. But out of those 11, here's my spreadsheet. I'm tracking all this stuff. So, okay, so it was just the Rtic and the Yeti that didn't have ice anymore, but still had a safe meat temperature. Interesting. But the others were all above for all those scores. And really, the only ones, there's really only 4 left with ice. 10 days it has been since the start of this ice retention challenge of 28 coolers, and things are shaking up. I didn't think I'd get this excited about coolers, but it's pretty interesting. So here's what's going on. There you have it. The ones with lids open are totally out. Now, most of these, except for the OtterBox, were out pretty much yesterday. Today, all of them are above 50, although I can still say the Rtic and the Yeti, they were just at like 51, 52, where the rest were in the mid 50s. A couple were even in 60s. These ones that are air sealed have these gaskets, which pretty much all these that are left do. I think that makes a pretty big difference. This Lifetime has done well. Even the Amazon special did pretty good. So what's left? You see these 3 are closed, but we're really only down to 2. The Orca has lost all of its ice, but it's still fairly cool in there. So it's out of the running, but it did get 1 point today still for being cool in there. So I'll leave it in there another day, but it's gonna be done tomorrow. Look at these. It has been 10 full days. Granted, I'm only opening once a day pretty much. But there is still ice in that. It's still cold in there. I don't know if I'd have believed that. And it's been hot. Yesterday was probably hit 100 degrees again, or close. And there we still got ice. That's it. When I created my spreadsheet for this, I made rows for 11 days worth of data, thinking that was probably on the top end, and we're going to go all the way to 11 days at least, and maybe it'll go beyond that. But I have a feeling tomorrow will probably be out of ice or darn close, but maybe still hitting some cool temperatures. So the Orion and the Cabela's are winning. Day 11. It has been 11 full days now of this cooler ice retention challenge, and we have met an end, I do believe. So here we are. The Orca is a clean out, so it's definitely above temperature. It only had 1 point yesterday, and so far all of them that kind of hit that point, by the next day they were warm and not doing anything, but held its cool really well. The Orion, let's look at that. So no more ice. The ice is gone. That's just the plastic wrap I'd put around the hot dog. Still holding under 50, but just barely. If we measure that hot dog, definitely not going to hit 40 or anything close to it like I was looking for. Here's a Cabela's. Let's just do that one real quick. See that? So it's a couple degrees warmer, but it's still under 50. So kudos. These guys held their own. Same on this one, though. That hot dog's not going to be anywhere near the 40 degrees you want. So there you have it. Kudos. These things went a full 10 days and then some. And truth be told, I was really curious. Last night, I came out late last night and the ice was gone on both of them by last night. So it must have midday yesterday some point. It ran out. So we've got a tie.
We have reached the end of our ice retention challenge. Here's how we tested and compared the ice retention on these 28 coolers over the course of almost 2 weeks. We tested how long they held an internal temperature of less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit, held a meat temperature at or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, had enough ice to hold the soda cans up, and how long there was ice in the cooler. Coolers received 1 point a day for each requirement they met, with a total of 4 possible points per day. Let's see how these coolers stack up against one another, starting with our winners. The best cooler overall was a tie between the Orion Core 65 and Cabela's Polar Cap Equalizer 60, with the Orion 65 being my top choice. Both coolers lasted 9 days and had a score of 36. Next, the Orca 58 and the OtterBox Venture both lasted 8 days. The Orca 58 came out as my top choice and had a score of 33, while the OtterBox scored a 32, making these coolers very comparable. After that, we had 11 coolers that lasted a full 7 days. The 7-day coolers were the largest cohort we had in this challenge. Led by the Rtic and the Yeti Tundra, this group consists of almost all roto-molded coolers except for the Coleman Extreme Marine and the Pelican. The Coleman is easily the best performing budget cooler for ice retention, whereas the injection molded Pelican barely made it to 7 days with only a few cubes of ice left. 8 coolers made it to 6 days, which to be honest, kind of surprised me. I guess my pre-game research was solid because almost all of these are good options. The Cordova Basecamp, Rover Roller, and Pelican Elite wheeled coolers were all under 50 quarts, and they dropped out sooner than their roto-molded peers. I suspect the larger coolers from these same brands would make it an extra day or so, all else being equal. While the Igloos we tested underperformed other brands, they all held ice for at least as long as advertised. The Trailmate claimed 4 days, and it held on until day 5. These coolers lasted 4 hot summer days sitting outside, but I wouldn't count on that in the real world. Last on the list was the Big Bobber Floating Cooler. This little guy doesn't fit in with the rest of the herd, but it looked like too much fun not to try. Don't count on this one for keeping meat cold or even for an overnighter, but when I go float the Boise River in an inner tube, this little dude will be tagging along behind me. And there you have it. We tested 28 different coolers and got some interesting results. I hope this helps you in your purchasing decision. But if you want to dig deeper, check out our blog post on the subject on OutdoorEmpire.com. Link in the description below. We went into a whole lot more detail that we just didn't have time to do in this video. Until next time, gear up and get outside.